So thank you for the intro. Hey, everybody, I'm Danielle, and I'm super excited to talk to all of you today about some tips and tricks for using real estate websites to help your geolocation efforts. So let's get into this. And hopefully I can find the controls. They are very small. All right. So if I show you this lovely picture right here, what do you notice? If you are over 25, you might think, this house has some good storage. There's some good built-ins here. But if you put on your OSINT hat, there is more to this story. So let's look closely, like really closely, and zoom in to the window, where we can see that we are in a flat area. We can see the view out to the street, and then the foliage nature outside suggests maybe we're in North America. There we go. Out the window, we see at the adjacent house, there is a dark window frame and then what looks like white, maybe almost blindingly white siding at the house next door. That suggests maybe the home next door was recently renovated, or it could be a new build, but not 100% sure. Back inside, we've got a fireplace, some crown molding, and sconces. All of these architectural details put together tell me that this is a craftsman style house. So let's put this all together. We're in North America. This is a craftsman house in a flat area. Can we say exactly where this is yet? No, at least I can't, but using some other pieces of info that we will soon see and some clever searching, we will. But who am I? Who's this person talking to you? So, hey, I'm Danielle Schneider. I have been in the OSINT and privacy security world for the past 5 years or so, working in public figure and executive protection. That's involved things like researching digital footprints, advising on technical security recommendations, and at times geolocating someone or something based on a photo or video. Right now, I am a senior manager at Picnic. And then before that, I was a security analyst at Tall Poppy. Both are small cybersecurity firms that are focused largely on public or executive protection. I'm actually presenting remotely right now, as you can see, but I am attending the summit in person in Arlington. I would love to connect with folks today and tomorrow. So if you're there and watching this upstairs, definitely feel free to say hi after we're all done. I'm all done here and would love to talk geolocation and all things OSINT with you. All right, enough about me. So let's talk about geolocation. What is that? This is something I think that most of you are probably familiar with, but for definition's sake, we can say it is the process of finding a location based on indirect information from other sources. So think of things like photos and videos, text, and at times metadata. Why do people do that proactively? So you might be doing this on someone's behalf to determine how easy it is to find their location and then take specific steps based on your findings. Or reactively, in an investigation, you might be trying to find a location to determine what you should do next. How do people do that? If you're starting from absolutely nothing, TinEye, Google Lens, Yandex, these are all great sort of reverse image tools. I found that each have their pluses and minuses. And then there is OpenStreetMaps and the tools that have been built to search it, like Overpass Turbo and Bellingcat's tools. These are great if you have some background info or details in the background of a photo, like if you can see that there's a train station and a gas station, all of that can be really helpful for OpenStreetMap searches. And then another one I want to share that is quite new actually is called findthatspot.io. That was released this past December and uses LLMs to translate a sentence into an OpenStreetMap search. And I found this to be pretty good so far. But there is another source of data right in front of your eyes, and that is real estate sites. They have exploded in popularity in the last 15 years, even among countries that tend to value privacy more than others, just because everybody wants to look at houses. So they fall into a couple of categories. So we've got third-party aggregators like Zillow that grab information from lots of different places and put it on one site. We've got brokerages themselves like Remax, and these typically only list properties that their own brokers are selling. And then property intelligence databases. These are really only available to realtors. So I don't have information on them because I'm not a realtor, at least not yet, I guess. So these sites are obviously helpful because they've got interior and exterior photos of the house that you can match with other information that you have. But beyond that, though, their biggest advantage when it comes to geolocation is the ability to search and filter by keywords and other information. So I'm going to go over some of the pluses and minuses of various real estate sites out there. It's not 100% comprehensive. There are hundreds or thousands of real estate sites out there, and I'm sure that there are some that I don't know about that would be great. But these are the ones that I come back to and have found useful. So starting off with Zillow, the most popular real estate site in the US. If there is a home that is for sale in the US, it is probably on Zillow. And because of that, it's great for keywords. Listings on Zillow are likely to be complete and optimized for the most amount of people to be able to find them. So if you're starting with a specific keyword you're looking for, Zillow is a good place to start. But it's not great for filtering. It's pretty typical, filter by number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, that kind of thing. And then it's only got 3 years of archives of sold houses. It has records of homes older than that, like you can enter an address and you'll see information, but you can't search it using filters. Then there's Compass. This is sort of a hybrid broker and then search site, kind of like Zillow. Tends to be kind of luxury leaning and mostly in major metro areas on the coast, but it has been expanding and growing and seems to be partnering with other companies to expand what's searchable on their site. The filters are okay, they're average. You can search by like the number of floors a place has, number of stories, which is a helpful thing when it comes to geolocating based on a photo or other info that you might have. And then you can apply filtered search to up to 12 years of archives, which is a huge range. You can sometimes find listings that are even older than 12 years via search, but I haven't found this to be super reliable. And then its biggest pro is historical rental listing search up to about 3 years old. I haven't found any other site that does this in the US, though if you know of one, please tell me, I would like to know. Redfin is another site to consider, less popular than Zillow, so some listings might not be on it or they might not be complete. And a pro, it's got some good filters. You can search by the number of floors your house was built and toggle on lots of different specific filters. And not to spoil the surprise, but we will go and see the unique filters that Zillow has. Its biggest pro, I'd say, is the window of sold archives that you can search up to about 5 years in total. You can sort listings by date that they were sold as well. So if you have a specific timeline window that you're looking for, you can get to that pretty easily with Zillow, or actually with Redfin. One thing to note though, Redfin is pretty popular in Canada and you can find some good results there using Redfin. And speaking of Canada, let's cover a few sites that document real estate info up there. So starting off super strong with House Sigma, which is an interesting name. It's got a ton of data, is free, and filter-enabled searches consistently go back to 2003-ish. And this is, I think, the longest out of anything that I've seen. You can search both historical rental listings and sales in British Columbia, Ontario, and Alberta, those provinces in Canada. For British Columbia, rentals are technically searchable until about 2020, but the number that show up drop off a lot when you go before 2023. Sales do go back to 2003 in British Columbia, but they won't be keyword searchable. In general, British Columbia and just the Vancouver area don't seem to keep rental data as accessible. And I'll contrast that to Ontario, which seems to keep everything up forever. So you'll find both rental and listing sales in Ontario going back to 2003, though once you get back that far, they won't be keyword searchable. The number of filters they have isn't great. You can't, filter by number of floors that they have. And I'll contrast that with Zilti. And if you can read that image right here, it's got a lot of filters that you can use. A couple that stand out to me are the previously sold filter. So you can see when a house might have been sold previously, even if it's being up for sale again, and lot frontage, which is how wide a lot is. It is middle of the road on archives, only going back about 3 years. It also only lets you search by sold, so no rentals here. And it's only got data from British Columbia, so not helpful for any other province in Canada. I have made a table, a handy table, that compares each site and their strengths and weaknesses, and I will leave this up here for about 3 seconds if you want to take a screenshot, though there will be, archives. Great. Okay, so some other tips for using these sites well. So based on other sources of, oh, my screen got, okay. Based on other sources of information, you might know the area or city that you're in. So understanding the area or what's typical for this location, like, what are the most common types of housing? Do they tend to be apartments or houses or skyscrapers or, all that kind of stuff? Learning about landscaping, learning about the topography of the area can really tell you a lot. And then learning about architectural styles. So learn what a Tudor style home looks like, or a Spanish style house, or a craftsman or ranch, and you will begin to recognize what is unique about each house. And if you want to make this a fun thing to do, just watch a lot of House Hunters. It's a great thing to have on the background when you're doing something else. And this is how I guess I inadvertently learned all of this initially. So one caveat I want to mention here is that these sites are not 100% accurate. They can absolutely help you find something using their filters and search, but they sometimes won't include the keywords that you think they should. All right, now let's do something interesting. So I've created a fictional case study where we can put these tips to the test. This is inspired by real situations I've worked on as an analyst, but this example is totally fictional. Photos I use here I made or I took from Street View or real estate sites themselves, and as an example, I did not go out and find someone's real account and then find their house. We're not doing that. So here is the scenario. A public figure has contracted with you to identify and locate a person who is sending them threatening messages online. The client wants to determine this person's identity and location to evaluate their possible threat level. You found social media accounts belonging to the person of interest, but nothing with a legal name. So this is the account we've got. Biggest hater 2025, apt. Joined in 2019, and the name is L. So before even thinking about trying to geolocate this person based on their tweets, we'd probably do a couple things first, like look for them in a Twitter data breach, which could get us an email, check for previous handles and archives. Like, I don't know if their name was biggest hater 2025 back when they created their account in 2019, or maybe they were just forward thinking, I don't know. Then, just look for our archives as well. But for the sake of today, let's assume that we didn't find anything interesting there. And now we're going to go crawl through their following list. And in doing so, we've got a few pretty helpful clues already. So this person follows a few Minnesota-focused accounts. One might be a coincidence or hobby. Maybe they're just an independent fan of the Minnesota Vikings. But 3, and it can be a pretty strong indication or at least a helpful starting point. So let's say that's all we saw that was interesting in the following list. Let's go through their tweets and maybe search by keyword. All right, here's one we would have found if we searched for school. The high school I graduated from 2 years ago had a cyber attack, and apparently hackers stole all the student files, LOL, dated March 7th, 2023. So when I think of Minneapolis and school data breaches, the first one that comes to mind for me is the Minneapolis Public Schools data breach in 2023. This was pretty well publicized at the time. A lot of you might have heard about it. And to confirm this, we might just do some good old-fashioned Google dorking on these terms, and that could get us a result. The date matches up here exactly, which is a strong sign. And this can also be confirmation of the age of the adversary here. So if they graduated at age 18 in 2021-ish, that would make them 22-ish now. So that can really help us guide our search. Though something I want to be clear about here is that there is definitely some confirmation bias happening in this fictional investigation. It's not the best practice. You would definitely want to keep your options open. I would not commit to this theory right away. But this is not real life. So let's keep going. Here is another tweet that we would have found from the beginning of 2021. My mom just bought this house and the basement is flooded. So this tells us that we're looking at a purchased property in about 2021-ish. So that means that we can't use Zillow to search because Zillow only goes back 3 years. And we've also got a filter keyword here, basement. This could be really valuable depending on where we determine the general area to be. In Minneapolis, Midwest in general, basements are really, really common, so it might not really help us, but something to have. Here's another one. This heat wave is killing me for real. Had to sleep downstairs at my mom's house last night, August 2024. All right, we're looking at 2 floors here, and it's possible that this is referring to that basement, but let's just assume it's not. So far, we've got a few data points. We're in Minneapolis. They got a basement, they got a 2nd floor. Let's throw these into Redfin because Redfin goes back 5 years and we will see what comes up. Yeah, all of these put together, that'll probably narrow it down a bunch. I think we'll find the house right away, right? No, okay, that's 14,000 results. So I think that's too many to look through. So instead, let's just keep looking at Biggest Hater 2025's tweets and see if we can narrow things down a little bit more. All right, now this is gold. So we've got an interior photo here with 2 views of the outside and 1 to the street and several architectural details. I want you to suspend disbelief here for a second because you might notice that this is the real estate photo from earlier, which I have edited a little bit to make it not seem exactly like that real estate photo. This is the result of 30 minutes in a Canva Pro trial. So it's definitely not picture perfect, but you get the idea. But if this were real, what would we learn from this image? So it tells us a few things. We've got a fireplace, hardwood floors, crown molding, but most importantly, when it comes to real estate sites, it is a craftsman style house. People love craftsman style house. And so a real estate listing for this place is very likely to include that in the home description. So let's enter that into the search terms and check for fireplace as well. And in doing so, we've only got somehow 173 options left. That is a lot less and is quite doable to look through, especially when we sort by sold date and then go down to the timeline that we're looking for. So some things I would keep in mind as I was looking through these houses to see if they're a match are things that would be less likely to change in a renovation. So things like wall paint color or light fixtures are not good. People change those kind of often. I would keep an eye out for the window placement and where the doors are and the crown molding, built-in storage. People don't tend to remove those. So I'll save you the 20 minutes or whatever that it would take to look through all of these photos and cut to the end where I found what looks like the house. Which is this one. I would see this photo and probably hold my breath as I compared it to the tweeted photo. I'd compare those windows, the fireplace, the built-in storage, and all of that put together would have me feeling pretty confident that we've got the right place. So let's pull it up on Google Street View and see what it looks like. All right, so here's the view. We've got an exterior photo. Let's go back to the tweeted image and compare. All right, so this looks like confirmation to me. We can see that the house across the way has those matching columns. And then the house, the adjacent house has that really, really white siding and the dark window frame matches as well. But for argument's sake, let's say that Google Street View wasn't available here for some reason. And in that case, I'd probably try going to Apple Maps where I would use their version of Street View, which is called Look Around. And if that didn't work, I would check Bing Maps, which exists and does have a pretty limited Street View collection. And it's kind of old, but it does exist and it's very rarely blurred out or redacted. So back to the case study, what would we do next? So we would try and find out who lives here and confirm their home ownership. I would do this probably by looking at county tax records or other public records. These are among the more authoritative that you can find, though I have seen situations when they're up to about a year out of date online. I'd probably also check those people search website, data brokers, and see if I can see the owner, though these can also be quite out of date as well. And then if I have determined who the owner is, I would probably go and try and start finding all of their social media accounts to then find who we think this person of interest is, which is maybe their 22-year-old kid. So if I can't find any information on the homeowner, I might look through data breach records to try to find an old email, and that might lead me to their other social media, and then I can find the person of interest. So how realistic was this? If you try this at your job, will you find the bad guy? I would say it is 50-50. There are a lot of things that could get in your way. So first is inaccurate or missing keywords. So we searched craftsman earlier. It's not always going to be the case that that is included in a real estate listing. You might pick out other keywords like French doors or closets or things like that. I've had cases where I've been really reaching and I just see green cabinets and I'm like, just throw it in the search. Let's see what comes up, and nothing did. So then there's confirmation bias. Everybody knows this problem. Once you feel like you've got a lead, you will distort the facts to fit that narrative. In this fictional case study, I made a lot of assumptions to find this house. They owned it. They never moved. They lived in Minneapolis, stuff like that. I would probably not try to pursue geolocating this person in real life unless there were no other leads. And then finally is disinformation. So depending on the adversary or person of interest, they could be deliberately placing misleading information in their posts. This is pretty rare when it comes to individuals who aren't already a person of interest that you know of, but it does happen. And that would, in this case, have really thrown me off into a wild goose chase. So this is obviously a very manual process. We entered the keywords, we looked at the listings. It is possible to automate these things. And I'll preface this by saying I haven't built any workflows on these tools yet. I've used them in passing. But if I were going to build a more automated workflow, here are some things that I would consider doing. So I would think about AI image processing tools. They are advancing pretty rapidly. I haven't found them to be super convincing so far. And I will say I don't have access to tools that are only available to law enforcement, so it's possible that those are a lot better. And for all my web scraping friends out there, I could definitely see a world where you are navigating to a site like Zillow and scraping it and put it in a spreadsheet and going through programmatically. And then there are rental data APIs out there. I have tried one called Rentcast, which lets you grab property information like home style, number of floors, price and date of sale, that kind of thing. So today we have been able to identify an adversary using their information, the social media post, which was helpful. But what about the other side of this? When you are proactively working with somebody to help conceal their location, to help protect them. The people who are most at risk for malicious geolocation or doxing are not necessarily who you might think. They're not A-lister billionaires necessarily who are in the public eye and have 24/7 private security. Rather, they are influencers or working actors or minor public figures. They don't have the resources for that type of security and protection. And so somebody finding and posting their location online can really impact their sense of safety. So I'm going to go over a few tips that you can share with the people that you work with and in your life to keep safe from malicious geolocation and doxing. Some of these are obvious, but I want to frame them with the background context of how we found the adversary here. Got to remove those photos. We were able to identify this person by looking at the photos on these real estate sites. Most importantly is the MLS, that is the multiple listing service, sort of like the intranet of the real estate industry. You'll need to contact the listing agent or photographer or the MLS itself to do this. They can tend to be kind of resistant to this because to them, these photos are kind of a portfolio of the deals that they can make. Then you'll also want to check, Zillow, Redfin, all those other sites that we talked about. This is controversial, but depending on this person's threat model, tell them to lie, tell them to give misleading information. This can be weird and risky depending on the situation. And as for some don'ts, don't post photos of your house. Tell people not to post photos of their house as much as possible. We were able to confirm that this person lived there because of a view outside the window and other distinct details. Don't mention anything about your neighborhood, please, or post things like all your stuff in boxes, or mention anything specific about your house. And don't blur your house. This is kind of counterproductive. Sort of screams, somebody lives here who doesn't want to see what their house looks like, or doesn't want others to see that. Blurring your house tends to be people's first instinct when they find out that you can, and it's important to try to persuade them not to do that. So let's talk about how you can do this type of work ethically so you can keep people safe. First and most importantly, you have to get permission before you do this work. You cannot go into an engagement with a client and say, hey, I already know where you live. Like, that's not cool, but you can talk about what you already know, maybe about their security posture. And similarly, you need to consider that person's threat model, how well known they are, if they've ever received any credible threats, and if so, what types of tactics do those person use. That really determines the level of scrutiny that you need to apply when you're searching for this kind of information. And when you're thinking about this stuff or talking about it with somebody, it's really important to frame it the right way. Most people, even public figures, don't think about this stuff. They don't think, my fireplace is kind of unique, isn't it? No, they don't think that. So I found it helpful to literally say to people, hey, there's no reason why you would have had to think about this stuff. It's not normal to scrutinize every single photo and text post that you make to see if there's anything that could lead back to where you live. So don't feel bad. There are things that we can do still to keep you safe, and you can keep this in mind for the future. Give actionable advice if you can, and focus on things that you can do as a practitioner. That'll involve removing those real estate photos, advising them on content they might want to remove, and taking down people's search websites. So summing this all up for you, look for those details. As OSINT practitioners, you know this, but still immerse yourself in the world of the thing that you're looking for, like architectural details, and you will be a lot more successful. Choose the right tool for the job. We all know with OSINT that it can really feel like there are so many tools out there, and real estate sites are no exception. So based on the information that you have already, you need to be judicious about the tool that you use, because that can really make or break whether or not you'll find anything at all. And then watch out for bias and rabbit holes. That is the pitfall of this type of work. And the assumptions that you make along the way can really, again, make or break whether or not you'll find anything. And finally, please be a good person. Do not dox people. Don't harass people. Don't proactively do this and send it to somebody without their permission. Just be kind when you do this work, and you'll already be in a really good spot. Thank you all so much for listening. My LinkedIn and email are here. And yes, that is an email that I created just for this conference because I know my audience. Please don't sign me up for newsletters. If you'd like to connect, I would love to hear from you, and I will be heading back to the summit in person after this. So definitely feel free to say hi. That's all I got.